seminars, we'll just do the chat in.
Mm-hmm.
You just someone's in poker chit chat. Let me see. Oh yeah, he's in poker chit chat. Let's go to poker seminars. Let's just keep it clean in there.
Oh yeah, which one are we doing? Poker chit chat
Yeah,
or poker
poker
seminar?
seminars.
Oh, my bad. I did say poker chit chat
Oh,
too, I
okay,
think.
okay.
So my bad, Slammer.
I mean, they're similar, but we've been doing it in seminars. So let's just stick it in there. We'll
Yeah.
we'll start in.
Yes. Let me know when you're ready to roll. We'll hop into it.
All right, sounds good. All right, let me just make one
You
more
want to start in the
post.
middle?
Yeah, let's just start in the middle. Let me just make one more post.
Okay.
Guys, get in hand
Good,
review.
because you don't have to see my 3 bust outs before. This is my last bullet too. You get 4 bullets in this thing
Oh
too, so I
damn!
YOLO'd my
Wow.
last
What
one.
was it? A $55 or a 100?
Yeah, it's a
55. Damn.
$55
What a hogger.
turbo. Like no bounties, no nothing
Oh, it
like
was a
that.
turbo too. Wow. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was pretty sweet. I love Six Max too, so I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just kind of a sucker for these tournaments. I mean, I've got a soft spot for like Six Max cash games too. Like I played a lot of Zoom, so and I think like I would assume my game's probably better like shorthanded. I think I'm probably a little bit more aggressive, and obviously like the shorter hand you are, the more you're going to be forced to play wider ranges. And I think against like the average MTT player, I'm doing pretty well in these types of tournaments. So definitely like these a little bit more than the 8 to 9 handed tables. They're just more fun. Like I
Yeah.
wish they made every tournament Six Max. Honestly.
Wow. You're in there. I like Six
Yeah.
Max a lot too. Definitely. It's a battle. I feel like there's not enough Six Max tournaments, if I had to be honest. I feel like
No,
there's
there's
really
not. I
not.
think for the most part, people still like full ring. Although a lot of tables are
Eight
moving to
max.
8 handed
Eight
instead of
max.
9, which is also great.
Yeah.
So something right in between, I guess.
Yeah. I
But
like
yeah,
that they're moving to 8. I definitely like
yeah.
that. All right, let's get it.
All right.
Let's get see if
Yeah.
anyone else files in, but let's get it for now.
All right. Just let me know if are we recording?
Yeah, we are.
All right. Cool. So we'll just hop into it then. So yeah, again, this is from the 55 Turbo yesterday. This little winter series that's going on PokerStars right now. Whole bunch of tournaments going on. So I was lucky enough to end up chopping this one. Heads up. I think the winner got like 17-2 and I got about 16. I think first place was 19-7 and second was 13-3, something like that. So he had, I think, like a 3-2 chip lead on me or something like that. So I was kind of surprised to see that with ICM payouts that I got pretty much equal pay in accordance to what he was. And I actually thought that this guy, he was another reg, and I thought with his chip lead he was just going to try to run it and finish it. But no, he offered the deal right away, and I'm like, yeah, fuck it, all right, I'll
Nice.
take the deal. That's fine.
Is that
So
wait? Is that the real Mehmet Mori? Am I seeing that correctly?
yeah,
He still
yeah, it
plays?
is.
Wow. I don't even know.
I don't see him a ton. I shark scoped him just to see what his stats were, and I don't think he's played like a ton in the
Hmm.
last 3 years or so. I mean, maybe he has. I'm not sure. He could be playing more on
Wonder what he's doing.
other sites
Yeah.
or just doing other stuff. But yeah, I haven't played with him a ton, but obviously, like I played a ton with him in the past. Funny enough, like we were at the same, we were at this table together at the same time, and then we were both. There's like another 55 progressive knockout turbo that we were at, kind of a smaller tournament of the day. That we
Hmm.
were FT bubble, and he would have made it to the FT. But he like got it all in pre with kings against like ace three and flop top set, and guy backdoor to flush on him. So we would have been at 255 six max tables if he would have ended up holding that hand. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. I mean, I remember battling with that guy quite a lot. I met him like one time. He's a pretty shy guy, from what I remember.
Yeah, yeah. Mickey, I think is his name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was scared, Hammer. He was scared. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we can get into this now. I'm gonna try to get through these as quickly as possible. I mean, if there's any real interesting spots, we can take our time and kind of look into them a little bit more deeply. But again, if you guys have any questions, just let us know. We'll be checking out the chat as well. So feel free to ask anything you guys might want to while this is going on. We'll just hop into it. Starting stacks here, we're 50K. So we are up 3 starting stacks here. I think this is a pretty standard open on the button.
You're up 6 starting stacks.
What did I say, 3?
3. Yeah.
Yeah, good brain, Kurt. Yeah, so obviously this lead isn't a thing from the big blind.
Yeah.
That being said, I think our hand is probably like still too strong to be folding here. Although this is going to be for the most part a 10 or like a big heart and two overs, something like that. These leading ranges by random players are always pretty unbalanced, and they usually have something pretty good here. But that being said, we do have a pair. I think like if he bets like 20K, we can probably get away from it. If he bets 10, it's a bit of an easier call, but I think it's just like right on the threshold, and then obviously we have a really easy fold on the turn,
Yeah, makes sense.
and definitely going to have to call here versus this three bet
What up, Kenny? What up?
specifically for the price.
So
What's going on, Kenny?
this is just blind versus blind. You're in the big blind here, or not blind versus
No,
blind?
no,
You're
no. I
just
called that. I opened and called
oh
the three bet
oh
here.
you all gonna call. Okay, it's very different. All right.
Here we'll go back.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I open. He three
Okay.
bet small, good sizing
Okay.
here.
All right. This is an interesting
So
one.
yeah, we get a PO, and I expect him to bet this board pretty aggressively here. And if he's going to be betting range, I like the size as well. He should be betting for a small size. If he has an ace, his hand doesn't need a ton of protection here, and he can just bet like really small with his entire range. I think like my range is going to be lacking a lot of like ace queens, ace kings. I would get those in pre-flop a lot. I do have slow played aces here, but that's obviously like a very small part of my range. Even a hand like pocket eights, I think I'd be getting in quite a bit for three bet for 24 bigs in these positions. So I don't have a ton of strong hands here. I guess like the strongest hands I'll have are maybe like ace 10 suited, possibly ace jack suited might get in there. And then maybe pocket fours, I say can get in there. And then I guess like ace eight and ace four. Other than that, I'm just going to have like a lot of suited connectors or suited broadways here that just kind of miss this board. Obviously, we do pretty well here. I remember what I did in game. I guess I'll just ask what you guys want to do in the spot versus small bet.
This is kind of an interesting spot. I think you. Well, I guess I could let everyone else if they want to say their piece first. If anyone else wants to say anything, anyone wants to give their opinion on poker seminars. Let's see,
Okay,
Slammer
Slammer
saying
wants to call.
call. Definitely seems reasonable.
What's going on? Hello. So you're
Yeah,
in
what's
there
going on?
too.
Hello, what's up, Dale? How you doing, bro?
He's so low. If you bet, he's going to go all in. I don't agree with that actually. Like I was saying in the first place, since he is betting very small, he can be betting his entire range for this size here. So, like, yes, of course, this is going to contain like ace king, pocket aces, stuff like that. But if he's betting his entire range, he's also going to have hands like king queen offsuit, no heart. He's going to have some pocket jacks here, just things of that nature. So if he's betting in his entire range, like, yes, of course, he's going to have some very strong hands. But when he bets a small and he's betting his whole range, he's going to have a lot of hands that miss this board too.
Yeah.
So,
I'll just say my first instinct, since no one else said anything. Let me see if anyone else did. My first instinct was leaning towards going all in here, but oh yeah, that's the move. Said jam.
that's the move on the
Yeah,
jam.
I feel like calling or jamming both kind of seem reasonable, but I do think with what you're saying that like there is a decent amount of bluffing range in his range. You still have the what is it, third best flush draw, third best flush draw. So it's probably a good best chance you have the best flush draw on the board. So I feel like jam is reasonable here. I don't. I think you could. I feel like it's one of those spots you can go both options, but I feel like jam is kind of like my slight lean here.
Yeah, I agree. I think both are probably good. Again, I haven't run this hand, so I'm not sure what the best play is here. So I'm gonna say I think hands like king queen suited. I think he's either flatting or jamming pre-flop. I don't think these hands make it into the three bet call range, or it would also be
Makes
like a pretty
sense.
big disaster to have to three bet fold a hand as strong as like king queen suited here. I think those hands like king queen suited, queen jack suited are pretty high frequency flat from these positions. I mean, you could argue squeezing or jamming queen jack suited, jack 10 suited. 24 bigs is a little on the deep side. You want to start jamming those hands a little bit more at 20 big blinds. So I do think that he probably doesn't have a whole lot of suited cards in his range here. So he probably just has a fair amount of, let's say, I guess his bluffs would be like some ace four suited, ace three suited for his suited cards here. Maybe some king nine suited, can three bet here, or king eight suited, stuff like that. And then the rest of it's just going to be like a lot of pocket pairs and then offsuit broadways, like some king jack off, king queen off, stuff like that. So yeah, I think let's say if we had a hand like king queen, of hearts, I think that makes a little bit more sense to be check calling for a couple reasons. One, the hand has a little bit more showdown value, so I don't mind just soft playing that. And for two, if we do decide to check jam a hand like king queen, we block hands like pocket kings and pocket queens. If he's betting his entire range here, that's going to include kings and queens as well. And with king queen suited, we block both of those hands. So it's more likely that he snaps us off with some sort of ace X hand when we check jam with a hand like king queen as opposed to jack 10 here. So between us unblocking like hands, like I said, if he's betting kings or queens here, we unblock both of those hands with our jack 10 here. And also, Jack 10 just has less showdown value here, so I don't mind just check jamming and potentially getting a hand like Kings through 10s to fold here. I think it would be a pretty tough call to be betting here and to have to call off with an underpair to an ace here versus a check jam. I can very easily be doing this with, let's say ace jack just wants to get in here, especially ace jack, no heart, needs a little bit more protection. So, yeah, I actually prefer to check jam with a hand like Jack 10 of hearts here, and would probably check call a little bit more with King Queen of hearts. So I did go for the check jam. That being said, I'm not sure if this is the best play. I just think that's what I was thinking in game. So, and I think that seems okay anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, we take it down. So,
What's up,
pretty
Founder?
nice to win a pot there with Jack High there, probably with the worst hand. And then again, I was going to say if we do get called, of course we have equity with our flush draw. I think we're very unlikely to be up against another flush draw, so I think our flush outs are always live in that
Yeah.
spot.
Makes a lot of sense. And welcome, Found in Flood. Welcome, welcome.
Easy call here for 4.5 days. Yeah, welcome, Found in Blood. Good to see you back. So easy spot there. Easy open with King 10. I'm going to take this pot multi-way.
Interesting.
So in general, in these multi-way pots, when we don't have position here, I'm doing quite a bit of checking here. And again, this is where it would be good once Odin comes out with this multi-way solver, just because I'm not quite sure what tendencies are here. In general, you want to increase your checking frequency, especially when you're out of position, multi-way. So obviously you do have somewhat of a betting range here as well. I'm just not 100% sure what the frequencies are. So just in general, I'm doing a lot of checking as the out of like I am the pre-flop raiser here, but I'm still out of position as well. This board's also going to hit like button flattening range a fair amount too. I think a lot of the calls he's going to have here for 30 bigs are going to be like a lot of Jack 10 suited, Queen Jack suited, King Queen suited, stuff like that. And then like some like Ace 4 suited where he's going to have flush draws. So I don't, even though we have an open ender, I don't think we just necessarily need to be betting here always. I don't think we like, it was kind of a disaster if like we bet and we end up getting raised here or somebody jams. Like, yeah, we have to call it off, but are we happy about it? Probably not. And then this also gives us, if we do end up checking here a lot, then we're going to be checking stronger hands as well, like queens and jacks.
So on that note, actually, Found in Flood just asked, can you name a hand you would bet here? Like, are you betting some of the time with queens, jacks, like ace, queen of hearts, ace, queen, heart, heart? Or are you still checking?
So that's a
all
good
those?
question. So I think if you do want to be betting here, you probably want to be betting more so hands that need a little bit more protection, like let's say king, queen, no heart. I think would be pretty good to bet here because this hand needs a fair amount of protection and it also unblocks flush draws and backdoor flush draws. So that would ensure that your opponent will be calling you a little bit more with a draw instead of a hand like value hand that we end up blocking here. So I'd probably check like pocket queens, pocket jacks, very high frequency, and then bet a little more high frequency with the king queens and ace queens, especially the ones unblocking flush draws here. So essentially, I guess you want to be betting a little bit more here with hands that need a little bit more protection that are also strong enough to bet for value.
Yeah, that makes
Good
a lot of
question
sense.
though.
Good question. Yeah, I like the check here.
And then on the turn, kind of an interesting spot. I considered raising here. I think I rolled this spot actually, and I rolled pretty low. We also block 10-9, which I think can still be in this player's range here as well. So I don't think this is a bad spot for a raise. He can still be like betting small here with some strong hands, but I would think in general, when I see these smaller bets, they're leaning more towards mediocre hands. That being said, I mean, he can still have a hand like Queen 9. I think would be a decent size to use here, and he's obviously stacking off with that, but we have decent equity with that hand as well. So I don't mind calling or raising here. I just rolled low, so decided to call. And versus this raise, I think we just have to fold, especially, he could have some some sort of flush draw here as well, like an ace nine of hearts, an ace 10 of hearts that maybe he wants to play a little bit fast here. So some of our outs could be dirty outs as well. The size is kind of small, which had me tanking a little bit, but I did end up folding it. I also think this spot in general is very underbluffed. So I think this range is just going to be more skewed towards value hands than semi bluffs, really. So a bit of a tight fold, especially for the price, but I think I'd much rather call here with like flush draws than I would with straight draws here. So
Definitely
just
a
ended up
weird
making a
one.
tight fold.
Weird one.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
I guess what do you think his raise is looking like? Would you put his raise on the turn there? I mean, what, like a queen eight suited, something like maybe like an
Yeah.
eight nine of hearts. I don't know, like something like that, maybe like an ace eight of hearts,
I mean, you,
ace
you
ten of
could
hearts.
merge bluff a hand like eight nine of hearts. I think, yeah, it wouldn't be a bad spot because eight nine of hearts can like for one it can raise, and if I have a hand like ace jack here and I face this raise, I probably have to fold because I could potentially be dead. And if he has a hand like eight nine of hearts, he could. For one, he has a hand that like if I end up jamming, he has enough equity to call off with, and he could also get me to fold better hands. So I think eight nine of hearts would actually be a decent raise here. That being said, I don't think enough people find these bluff raises. I think their natural instinct is just to call because they have a pair and they have a draw and they just kind of want to see it. So I think that would be a good spot to raise with a hand like eight nine of hearts.
So it makes the spot so interesting because his rate's kind of hard, like ranging him on this raise on the turn. I feel like a little bit.
Right,
Like pocket eights, you
right.
think would kind of be doing something pre-flop, and maybe you could have pocket eights. Maybe you could have a nine ten still. Obviously, you block. You definitely still could have a nine ten though.
Uh,
You do block some of
yeah,
them. So yeah, there are a few hands. Queen eight suited,
yeah,
eights, nine ten, maybe like an eight nine
yeah.
of hearts.
And yeah, like I said, I don't find it hard for him to have like semi bluffs or in this spot. I just think that when we do see a bet and a call, and then you see a raise here, just in general, these ranges are always going to be a little bit more skewed towards value than semi bluffs. So, like I said, I thought this spot was close, and if I think it's close, and I think opponents are mainly under bluffing in a spot like this, I'm probably just going to take a passive approach and just muck it here. So.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So decided to limp here. We might get some raise in the spot, but I think in general, we just end up limping a lot of suited combos here. And then if we want to be raising some suited combos, they're going to be like the top of our suited range, like the ace king suited, the ace queen suited, and then like some seven deuce suited, some eight three suited, some 10-5 suited could end up bluff raising here as well. So, but then essentially everything in between, we want to play pretty high frequency call with the suited combo varieties anyway. So pretty easy limp call in the spot too.
So you 5x, right?
No, he just 3x,
Oh, 3x. Oh, go 6K
which
big
is
blind. 6K big blind. Okay.
still a bit on the small side. This deep, I would at least be 3.5ing it, but it's not like a huge error. And obviously, this is a very good board for our opponent's range. We never have aces or kings. I'd say the strongest hands we have here are king five suited, ace five, pocket five, stuff like that. So in general, I don't think we do a lot of raise here. I think we do get some raise because, like I said, we do have some two pair combos, but we never have aces, we never have kings, we never have ace king. So in general, we want to be playing this board pretty passively. So I'm mainly going to be calling and mixing in a little bit of raise with this combination. And once he checks on the turn, I think we probably have to bluff this spot. It kind of sucks because these diamond combos are usually not very good spots to be bluffing with. That being said, we don't have a ton of other hands that miss here that aren't, queen jack, queen 10, jack 10. Even a hand like, let's say if we're limping what is it? The deuce four suited that gets there on the river. 3-4 suited makes a pair here. 3 deuce suited makes a pair. So all those hands like that would make better bluffs. Now they have pairs on the river. So I think this is kind of close to the bottom of our range here. And that being said, again, the diamonds are kind of bad combos for us to be bluffing with, but we definitely want to be bluffing some diamonds here. So I think I think I ended up blocking here, which I kind of like with the diamond combos. Since obviously he's going to be folding if he has diamonds in his hand because they obviously miss. So when we have diamonds ourselves, we usually probably don't want to be bluffing for the bigger size. So, but we definitely do get some bluff. I'd also want to block here with like some king X here. If we had a hand like king nine, I think we get to block here once he checks a turn. We definitely have some ace X here. Like let's say if I had a hand like ace three in the spot like that, I wouldn't mind just block betting to have some stronger hands in our range as well, and also potentially get him to do something crazy versus a small bet. So decided to go for the block here, and I think we're pretty much full weight bluff in this spot here because we don't have a lot of worse hands than this one here. So and then with 10 high, like we could probably show down maybe some, like if we had Jack 10 of diamonds or Queen 10 of diamonds, stuff like that. Those have a little bit more showdown value, and I'd be a little bit more willing to just try to go down with those hands, and then the ones with a little less showdown, I don't mind turning into a bluffer.
Are we going a third pot on the river? You said full ways here, you think? No, you're never going like a bigger size here? Probably not
With my
needed.
diamond combos, I'm going smaller here. And then let's say if I have a hand like Jack 10, no diamond, I might go for a bigger size here because if we have an ace here, we definitely once he checks back here on the turn, mainly his strongest hands are going to be gone. There is a chance he could be slow playing some pocket king, some ace five for sure. But for the most part, once he checks here on the turn, his range is mostly going to be like some king X, I guess, at his strongest. And then like when we have an ace, for one, we want to put max pressure on his. Let's say if he has a hand like 7-5 offsuit that he decided to ISO here, or a hand like king eight offsuit, stuff like that. Not only do we want to put max pressure on when they have that part of their range by betting a bigger size, but we also want to get max value when we have the stronger part of our range too. So I think we definitely bluff for two different sizes here. And like I said, I like bluffing the diamonds for the smaller size, and then our combos that need a bluff that are unblocking flush draws, I think we can go a little bit bigger.
Okay, makes sense.
Take it down. It's also nice to bet third pot on the river there. It only needs to work,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
out of four
yeah. I
times.
like it. It's probably exact
So,
line I would have taken. Yeah, I like the
yeah.
size. I'm just curious how, yeah, like what like what you already explained it, but your rhyme and reason why you're sizing up and not there. So it's a good
Right,
explanation.
right. Definitely want to have two different sizes there. So versus a 3x, I mean, it gets kind of close here, but I still think we probably have to call with most of our ace x here. This spot got really weird too. We see a big bet being used here, and I'm not going to immediately say that this isn't a good size because I honestly don't know. For the most part, on these paired dry boards, I think in general, if you're going to be betting here, you don't really need to be betting for like a huge size here. But I guess don't quote me on that. I'm just gonna say in general, I thought this was a little bit off because we have an opponent 3xing here. That's obviously, I don't think you should be 3xing at all. I don't think we should be going bigger than 2.5 in normal circumstances. So I'm just assuming that this is kind of a weaker player in general. That being said, we absolutely cannot fold this spot. The question becomes whether or not we want to check raise or check call. So yeah, I guess if you want to throw in your 2 cents about that.
I mean, probably just a check call, but I do get the argument for check raising just to take down the pot at this moment. There's going to be so many bad turns for your hand coming up, so it's just going to create a pretty vulnerable situation. My gut is telling me to check call here, but I definitely don't mind a check raise. I think putting in a small check raise could definitely just win you the hand so much that you're going to probably have a hard time calling off any turn barrels coming up unless an ace or a three comes, or maybe an eight. So it's an interesting spot. Like I probably would be in game flatting here, but I'd like to hear definitely if you're check raising here or taking a little bit of an interesting line. Let's see what people are saying in the seminars.
Slammer and recalling.
Calling makes sense. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
All right, so yeah,
Yeah, call for that's the
that's
move.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a block catcher, but then it's also just your hand is strong enough where I don't think we could ever argue folding here. So yeah, it is, I guess, quote unquote, a bluff catcher. But anyway, so in game, what I was thinking is that for one, I think when a bigger size is being used on a board where I don't think the big size is appropriate, I think in general, our opponent is just going to be more weighted towards value. So I'm going to take kind of a cautious approach in this spot. I would also be a little bit more willing to possibly check raise or check jam with a hand like 3-4 suited, 3-5 suited, 6-3 suited, stuff like that that doesn't have overcards to the 8. And if our opponent is bluffing and like let's say the ace turns, that obviously our hand improves, and that's a spot where our opponent could potentially bluff. So with ace three specifically, I think I like calling a lot more here and playing a little bit more cautious, and then probably mix in more check raises with 3-4, 3-5, 3-6 suited, because these hands need a little bit more protection and kind of benefit a little bit more from just taking down the pot immediately. But between us having the ace overcard and me thinking that this player's range is probably a little bit stronger than it should be, I'm just going to take a cautious approach here and just go with the check call. And then if we just get a bet here on the turn, I think we just have like a really easy fold. So like, yeah, it kind of sucks that we're kind of like, at their mercy, and the spot in general is just kind of gross. But I think the line that we took is probably the best, and really there's kind of nothing that we can do about it. It's just too strong to fold in the flop, and then we're just in a situation where we just have to fold the turn. So it is kind of gross. We put in a fair amount of money there, but I don't think we can ever be like hero folding the flop there by any means.
Yeah. I just had it. Fucking probably sell like pocket tens or something silly like that.
Hmm. And so small blinds range should be a little bit stronger here than a big blind calling range. That being said, I still think this range never has aces, kings, queens. Maybe some pocket aces at 30, well, at 35 big blinds. So I think aces probably does a little bit of flatting here, but I don't think most people are still playing aces in the spot really. I also think from cutoff to small blind, like ace king, ace queen are going to be pure three betting, and I also think a hand like ace queen suited could be just like jamming, as well as like king queen is just going to be jamming. So I think these hands are not in this player's range. Even a hand like jack 10 I think would be a really good jam spot for 35 bigs versus a cutoff open here. So I think a lot of, even though like his range is stronger flatting from the small blind, I still think this board is much better for our range than it is for his. So I'm going to use a high frequency c bet in the spot, and turns kind of whatever. I mean, I am betting my range here, so I definitely still have some king X in my range here. But that being said, our opponent is also going to have a fair amount too. Like he should be flatting some king 9 suited, king 8 suited. I think king 10 suited would be a pretty good rip from him, but I wouldn't be surprised if I see some calls there for 34 bigs. I don't think he gets any lead here either, because like I still have all the strongest hands. I still have ace king, I still have king queen, I have jack 10, aces, queens, kings, all those hands. So and when I bet the small size, I'm betting my whole range. I don't think he gets any lead here really. So on the turn, I think things become a little bit interesting. I don't know what I did here in game. I probably rolled between bet or check. I like betting here because we unblock any potential backdoor diamond draws that he's going to be check calling, that he would have to check fold here on the turn. Like, let's say a hand like jack 9 of diamonds or 10-9 of diamonds would definitely be check calling on the flop and check folding on the turn. So unblocking those hands are pretty good here. So yeah, I probably ended up rolling. Obviously rolled here low, so I went with the check. And I was going to say, that being said, just because we check on the turn doesn't mean we can't potentially win the hand on the river. Obviously, like when we river the straight, it's pretty good here. Then he checks again. I'm going to be probably bluffing this spot pretty high frequency in general. It's going to be really tough for him to call. Even just with a bare ace, I think it would be pretty tough for him to hero here. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like high frequency calls with an ace. But if he has a hand like a queen here, it's going to be tough. If he's calling with like obviously, if he has 10-9 of spades that he happened to just check call with, or if he made a 10 on the river, it's going to be hard for him to call there. So I think in general, I would just be bluffing a lot in this spot here. I can also have slow plays myself here with ace king and king queen and stuff like that. So just because I check the turn doesn't mean I don't still have netted hands here on the river. So I definitely want to be betting those for value as well. So in general, like I said, this board is a lot better for our range than it is for his. So I think that just leads to us doing a lot of betting in this spot. And he actually had the queen jack, which I actually think would be a pretty good jam spot from these positions for 34 bigs. I mean, anything over 34, it's getting kind of close, but for 30, I would definitely be jamming here versus a cutoff open, and then probably mixing more calls versus hijack and earlier. So yeah, I mean, this is just kind of another example is where you see people not jamming wide enough and just wanting to flat here in the spot. So maybe he does have like a little more jack 10 suited, queen jack suited than I originally gave him credit for. That being said, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about this spot. I mean, we have a straight, they have a straight.
Yeah. Yep. I thought you were going to get called with an ace X there on the river. I thought I was just going to hero you. Felt like this.
Yeah.
I thought that's what was going to be the result. I thought that was going to be the results of the hand.
Yeah. Once he just check calls anyway, for sure. Yeah, I would be check calling in his spot too, because like I said, I can still have like full houses in my range there,
I'm curious.
for sure.
Would you say you're reshoving this hand every time, or how often are you gonna be flatting it here in the big blind? Also in this
Uh,
spot.
with kings, I think for 15 bigs, we mainly just want to be jamming every pair that's not aces, really, and I would be slow playing aces here always. So for 20 bigs, you might get to mix some flat, even though I think the charts say we're like pure three betting with hands like this. I would definitely take the opponent into consideration. This guy has 53 bigs here. He's opening from the cutoff, so I do think this range is going to be pretty wide. So this would be a decent opponent to actually slow play some big hands against, because if we jam, he's probably like really wide, and we probably just get a lot of folds here. And if we have the top of our range, that would obviously kind of be a disaster. But that being said, I think at 15 bigs, we just pretty much pure jam like any pair, and I would be slow playing aces here. I think for 14 bigs. So yeah, kind of a standard spot, and he had a hand he obviously has to call with, so we get pretty lucky there. And versus a limp, oh, I remember the spot here too. So essentially we're 28 effective because this guy's got us covered here by one big blind. Not sure what this range is here. Obviously, I don't care. We have ace king, so I thought about just isolating here, but I'm assuming like it kind of sucks. Like if we let's say 4x here and this guy just calls, and we have ace king off out of position, and I mean it's probably fine, but I guess I'd be a little bit more willing to ISO if I had a hand like ace king suited, ace queen suited, stuff like that that plays a little bit better post flop, and then we can just rip our offsuit variety. This way we actually get some like really strong hands in our range that we can just be like jamming with, so we're not just always like kind of like on the weaker side at least. So I just ripped it in here,
Interesting.
and then this guy,
Go ahead.
what's up?
No, this is something I haven't been doing enough. Probably I didn't realize like off limps we're like jamming here for like 27 bigs or whatever.
Well, this guy's only 15 effective here, so like
Right, right,
it's
right.
like we don't have to worry about this guy waking up too much, because this is only one range here, so it's like going to be very rare that this guy actually wakes up with something. But then again, I mean, we're kind of saying whatever. Like we have ace king here, I'd probably do the same with a hand like pocket eights, pocket sevens, stuff like that.
So ace,
And then like he's still gonna call off like ace king, ace queen, ace jack. So even if we have like those smaller pairs, I would be jamming here a lot. Like we're still gonna get caught by this range and be
yeah.
flipping. So
What about like ace queen off, ace jack offsuit? Are you still taking the
I
same
would just rip
approach in this
those
spot?
too. Yeah, I'd probably just rip those as
Probably
well.
those, and then the suited variety, you're probably just raising it up, like a four
Right,
X raise or
right.
something. Okay, makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Huh. Interesting.
So
Okay.
he actually called this pretty quickly. I think this guy's a reg here too. So I was kind of surprised to see him just snap it off with ace jack. Not to say that this is a bad call.
Yeah.
I was just a little surprised to see how little time he took. So this made us.
Real quick, I just want to make a comment. The more that I think about it, too, like when you're 4Xing this spot, Ace Jack is put in like a way, it looks a lot stronger, I feel like, when you're in like Ace Jack's perspective, like you're raising the small blind, like I feel like looks weaker when you do it this way, too. Like you look a little bit, even though you're jamming, but you're just jamming for so many chips, it just kind of doesn't seem like you have Ace King that much. While like if you're
Mhm,
4Xing the small blind to that limp, it just looks like you're very strong. Like it just looks like
mhm.
you're going to be at the top of your range a lot in that spot, even if maybe you're going to be doing it with some ace nine suited and whatever, some hands like that, some king queen suited and king jack suited
Jack
or
ten
hands like
suited,
that.
queen jack suited.
But
Yeah.
but like
So
oh
then essentially, if this guy folds and this guy ends up jamming for whatever reason, like we still have the price that we can call off here, or he just calls and then we have hands that play pretty well post flop. So
yeah.
yeah, I definitely would be 4xing more with the suited varieties too. So
And I'm just trying to even more make more of a comment, I guess, that like I feel like when you 4X here, it almost looks stronger than if you're just jamming to the limp. Like if you're an ace jack offsuit shoes, I feel like it almost looks like I don't know. It just looks to me. It looks like stronger to 4X that spot in the small blind because like how many people just isolate decently wide in that spot at all? Usually like you're just nutted when you're isolating that spot. Like most people are at least to like a 15 big
yeah.
limp and you're isolating small blind. 4X like you usually have a
Uh-huh.
very strong hand. But if you're jamming here, I feel like it does. Maybe it opens up to you kind of like a Jack 10. Like some people are probably jamming like a Jack 10 suited or like a pocket threes or like I don't know, like a King Jack offsuit or like hands like that where you might not be the 4Xing with. I mean, maybe the ranges aren't as far off as I'm saying, but for me, for some reason, it just feels stronger when you 4X that spot than when you're just jamming there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, maybe the average player is maybe a little bit stronger when they just 4x here as opposed to just jamming here. But I'd like to think that my range is going to be balanced here because,
Right.
like you said, I probably would be like isolating the queen jack suited, the ace eight suited, stuff like that, that probably just doesn't want to like rip it in for like with ace eight suited. I don't think I would just want to rip it in here for 28 effective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely have some hands that, and then we also get to isolate this player as well, who's probably a weaker player limping here from the cutoff. So we do get to play heads up and not allow this guy to see free flop as well. So whenever we're playing heads up, that's going to increase our chances of winning a pot. So yeah, kind of an interesting spot for sure. And then we see the same player limping again. I think we're pretty okay to limp behind here. It really sucks, like if we end up isolating and he ends up jamming, because then we have a really nice hand that we probably have to fold versus a jam. Also, we're in position here, so I'd be a little bit more willing to isolate. Like, let's say if this guy limped in EP and we were in the hijack with 10-9 suited, I might be a little bit more willing to isolate there because there's more players who have position on us, and we kind of want to isolate the weaker players. So I think it's pretty easy limp for us in this spot. And then we get a lead here. Obviously, we have a pretty easy fold. I would have considered betting sometimes if it did fold to us, but yeah.
Makes
Much to say
sense.
about that one. Pretty nice speed this late in the tournament, seeing a lot of people limping.
Oh yeah.
So he bets a little bit bigger here. If he just like min bet here, I probably would have considered raising a little bit here. I guess I would probably do it a little bit more if I had like king five of diamonds or king five of clubs, stuff like that. That turned a backdoor flush draw as well as having an overcard and backdoor straight potential. When he bets a little bit on the bigger side, I think I'm just going to fold. Also, my range should have more 6x in it, so we do want to be a little bit aggressive in a spot like this. And if we have any kind of hands that have like overcards with backdoor draws, we can be playing them aggressively here. I'm just assuming this guy probably doesn't really understand ranges, and that, you know, I probably have a lot more 6x than he does, and he's just kind of betting when he has a good hand here. So just going to let it go when he bets a little bit bigger. And then the spot was close. I think King Jack off is still going to be a call here. I think King Queen would be an easy call. I think King 10 would probably be a fold here. So yeah, I thought it was close, but we probably still have to call. He's going to be jamming Jack 10 suited. He's going to be jamming King 9 suited, stuff like that. So
Are we in the money?
we're definitely done. Yeah. We're definitely in the money
Definitely
here.
the money. Okay. I mean, I think this is a pretty standard call, just in a normal EV situation.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Like I said, if there's ever a point where he's jamming hands that we dominate, like I think we definitely have to be calling here.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, he's jamming from the button, so he's going to be pretty wide here in general.
Yeah, you could have like
So
a king three suited, I would think, a lot of the time, hands like that, right? So
he
yeah.
better not. I mean, he shouldn't have 8-3 suited.
No,
That would
not
be
not
a
eight three. I
punch.
said king three suited. King three suited.
Oh, King 3 suited. I mean, even that would be
King
kind of
five
close,
suited.
I think, but maybe not. Maybe not a pun. Maybe like King 6 suited starts jamming, something like that. So yeah. Anyway, he just ends up having
Jacks.
the
Yeah.
nuts here. So kind of unfortunate. Board you want to see when you have kings, but I guess it's better that there's two aces out here instead of one because it makes it less likely that either of these guys have kings in the spot.
It's interesting. Like I'm.
Um,
Yeah. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. What do you want to do in this
I
spot?
mean, my instincts tell me to min bet, but I probably a min bet. I mean, I feel like the only guy you're really worried about too much is Zorro. I mean, Zorro could obviously have a decent amount of ace X's in his range. I mean, big blind can too. There are going to be a solid amount of probably like every ace X is in the big blinds range other than the bigger ones, which will be three betting, and you block out the ace kings obviously, and someone would be coming in for a three bet anyway with the ace kings. So I mean, I still think you have somewhat of a range advantage here, and I think it's just going to play pretty obviously if you do put in a very small bet. I don't know if you're going to be getting value from anything else. There might be like some 7Xs you could be getting some value from. Kind of the only hand I could really think of. So
Okay, so you made a good point there. Like when you said you don't see many other hands that we'd be getting value from, I think that's a good point, and probably the main thing that I'm thinking about here. I'm also going to be checking some ace X in the spot, of course. Probably more so with my weaker ace X and probably bet a little bit more of my stronger ace X because in the time one of our opponents does have an ace themselves, we end up stacking a worse ace in a spot where they're probably never folding trips. So with a hand like pocket kings, if we are ahead here, our hand needs very little protection. So I really don't see a whole lot of reasoning for betting with a hand like pocket kings. I'd much rather bet a hand like, let's say, king seven suited or pocket eights through pocket jacks that need a little bit more protection. They're a little bit more vulnerable to
Makes sense.
kings and queens and jacks. So I think with kings specifically, we want to be pretty high frequency checks. So essentially, the less protection we need in the spot, the less we want to be checking, and the more we need protection, the more we can be betting here. And I think if we are ahead, our hand needs very little protection. So I'm going to be pretty high frequency check here. Yeah, that's a move for sure. Definitely. We and by checking as well, we allow people to potentially bluff and then catch up as well. Like say somebody has a hand like Jack ten of clubs, and then we end up checking here in the turns of Jack. Like we could potentially be getting at least one street from a hand that would have just ended up auto folding flop. So,
Makes sense. Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. I like checking here quite a bit. And then this kind of sucks. I mean, this guy's range can be whatever. This guy can certainly have an ace here as well. And in his shoes, I would probably be flatting a fair amount if I had ace X as well, because my range is still uncapped here. Like I said, I still have ace X in my checking range here. So I think if he has an ace as well, he has a hand that needs very little protection, and he doesn't want to just raise and then allow me to kind of just like easily fold here when I have a hand like pocket kings. So for the small bet size, I think we just absolutely have to call. This range can be whatever. There can be a lot of 7x in this range, so we definitely can't fold for this size. And checks around on the turn. And what do we want to do on the river?
I mean, probably check. I don't really see any hands you're going to get value from here. So probably just check. I mean, I would imagine you check and try to get this button to potentially bluff, or I don't know if you're calling if he does anything, but I don't see any value you're going to be getting here. Maybe a 7x will call you from the big blind, but it seems very hopeful in a spot like this that he's going to be calling you there. I'd probably just check. I just don't really see like anything you're getting value from. But I'd like to hear your opinion. Let's see what everyone
Okay.
else thinks.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm waiting on here too. The move says rip. Slammer says 188. It's about half pot. Zorro isn't bluffing. You mean if we check to him on the river here, he's not
I think
bluffing?
that's what he means, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you're probably right for the most
I
part.
mean, yeah, I would agree.
And
It's usually not, but it's not
yeah,
a question,
once you
but
get checked
usually.
twice, it's gonna be kind of hard to bluff here. And if somebody is bluffing here, I would just like tip my hat to them. But I do think this spot would be pretty underbluffed. I think here.
Steve hates the
Steve
half
hates
pot.
that pot.
That's pretty fair.
Bounded flood would check. So yeah, we've got some differing opinions here. So yeah, I think we definitely have a value bet here for a couple reasons. One, I think we bet, and I guess what I'll say is I'm gonna block bet here, mainly because one, I think we would if we bet big here, we're gonna make it easier for our opponents to fold like the weaker parts of the range, like if somebody's like check calling with a hand like pocket fives or 8-7 suited stuff like that. I think we bet big, and this is a multi-way pot. For one, I think multi-way pots are super underbluffed. So when you see big bets here, I think that kind of allows our opponents to kind of get away with it pretty easily. For two, I think our hand definitely has value here. I think we can easily get value by worse hands, but we probably have to bet on the smaller side in order for that to happen. And for three, what was the other spot? So if we bet and we get jammed, I'm going to assume like we have the easiest fold ever. I don't think anybody's ever going to find a bluff in the spot too. So I think our hand is definitely strong enough to bet for value. And then, like I said, if we do get jammed on, I'm pretty confident that neither of these opponents are going to find bluffs in the spot. Also, I would be doing this with a hand like, let's say, a7 suited, a6 suited, stuff like that, that really blocks a lot of possible value that our opponents could have. And I think when that happens, we want to be using a smaller size. So in that way, we also get to throw in some stronger hands into our block betting range as well to potentially allow our opponents to either bluff raise or call down pretty weak. So decided to go with the small. No, I checked here, actually. This is a little surprising. I actually thought I block bet here. So
What would you bet? Size
yeah.
up is like 60K or something?
Uh,
65?
I bet like 130 here, like third
You
pot,
go a
something
little
around
bigger.
that
Okay.
that range.
Okay.
Yeah. So and like I said, I think it's really tough for us to be bluffing in this spot. And usually in spots where there's not a lot of bluffs, we don't want to be using bigger sizes because like I said, we're gonna make it easy for our opponents to fold like the marginal parts of their range if we bet really big here. And then for two, I like you were saying earlier, I don't think there's a ton of hands that we get called by that are that much worse than ours if we bet for the big size. So when we bet small, we get to potentially get some hero calls by weaker hands. So I was a little surprised that I ended up checking here. And this is essentially like the hand that I was looking to get called by a block bet here. I really thought that I bet third pot in this spot. This is a really bad flat here as well.
Yeah, I was gonna
I mean,
say.
the bet on the flops, whatever, like it's fine. He's gonna have some ace X in his range. I'm sure this hand's not gonna be betting full weight, but I think I'm okay with it at some frequency anyway. So yeah, kind of a little upset that I didn't find a value bet here. I really thought I did, but I don't hate checking either because I think it's still fine to like slow play hands like a7 or a6. But then, like we were saying earlier, I think this guy's going to bluff almost never. So essentially, we're trying to get called by a 7 in the spot. And then if like big blind ends up check raising here, I think we just have a super easy fold anyway. So yeah, I think we definitely missed a bet here in the spot. Definitely an interesting
Yeah,
spot
definitely a
though.
very interesting one. Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Oh, that's what we said. I'm expecting Zoro to fold no matter what size, trying to get called from the big blind. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Unless Zoro, for some reason, is just holding the absolute nuts. But you'll know by
Right,
the river.
right. So this spot's kind of close. I think we probably get the VPIP here. I think these suited ace X's like to play multi-way here, especially when we're getting a good price here in the small blind. Again, this hand is going to play pretty decently multi-way. We can make the nut flush here, so I did flick it in. And then when we get this bet here, like our hand's decent to continue with, but this range is still uncapped. This player has more 5x than anybody else, so this player can still definitely have some strong hands here. He is betting small, which really makes me want to continue here. But I just ended up folding here again in these multi-way pots. There's not a lot of bluffing going on here. So when you see bets, they're usually more skewed towards some sort of strong draw or like a value hand in this spot. So if I'm heads up here, I'm definitely continuing here. Maybe even if we're three-handed, I find a continue here. But when we have this player betting into three people, and then we also have two ranges that still have to act after us, I think there's a lot of situations where we just call here or check raise, and then somebody like back raises, and then we're just in the shittiest spot ever. So this might look a little tight, but I ended up folding here, and I think I'm okay with it, four-handed. And then again, like I said, we're really like none of us have that much 5x here. Like the big blind's gonna have more 5x than anybody. So the fact that he's is still left to act here is kind of an issue here. So I'm okay with making a tight fold here, and it looks like we avoided some disaster here. And this guy just had a 5 in the big blind. This guy had a good draw here. I like his check as well,
Hey,
mainly because this range is going to incorporate a lot of 5x. And then the more players involved in the hand, the more we want to be checking in general because we need to be, if we are going to be betting in these spots, we need to be betting with the absolute strongest draws and the absolute strongest hands here. So, but in general, I think four-handed on this 5-5-4 board where this range, and this range really don't have much 5x, and they have to worry about the big blind, who definitely has a 5x advantage. I think there should be a lot of checking from the pre-flop raiser here in this spot as well. And then this guy can just kind of like bet whatever, I guess. And I like the size too
hey,
here. He obviously like it's fine to be betting here, but I'm okay with the small bet too, mainly because he doesn't want to just be putting in a ton of money multi-way, and especially when this guy hasn't acted yet either. So
Kurt. So Slammer had a question. Just to kind of, we'll talk about a couple of real quick things that are just like in general things. So when
okay.
she says when Kurt says he bet this bet is not a thing. Can he expand when it comes up again when bets are just not correct, and like how you can spot that?
Yeah, for sure. Which spot were you talking about specifically? I know the spot where we got led on I think it was like the 10-5 deuce or 10-6 deuce, whatever, and we had second pair. I said this bet wasn't a thing.
It
Was
was
there another spot that I
it
that
could
I mentioned
it could
that
have been
then?
that last one too. At the beginning of the screen, you said it a couple of times. You move on real quick because you can spot it, and I can't. Yeah, maybe
Okay,
what was
okay,
it?
yeah. Apologies there.
What
Go
was?
ahead.
No, it's all good.
What was the exact the other spot, I guess, because I'll go back to it and elaborate a little bit more.
was the very
Oh, the
beginning.
very beginning. So yeah, so we had our opponent lead. I think it was the 10-5 deuce,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
full
Okay.
heart, all heart board, where the big blind donk led there, and there's just not a donk leading range on that specific board. And there are going to be some boards that we do get to donk lead, but those spots are mostly being studied by like really high level players that are studying the spot like pretty aggressively. And normally when you see donk leads in spots like that, it's because the board is specifically a lot stronger for the big blind's defending range than it is for the pre-flop openers range. So when we see donk leads in spots like that, they're mainly going to be like more inexperienced players who are just betting because they have a good hand or a good draw and don't recognize that like when you do have donk leads, you're doing it because the board is so much better for your range than it is your opponent's range. Not necessarily like, oh, I have a good hand here, I get to lead. Like that's not how it works. So that's in that situation. That's why I said it anyway. But in the future, I know I've said that a few a few times in the past too. So I'll try to elaborate on those spots and definitely feel free to shout it out if I happen to glance over a spot that I might think is a little more face up, but we'd be happy to elaborate a little bit more
Yeah,
too
because
if I'm being a little vague.
no, it's funny because those donk lead spots I feel like for us are very natural because like yeah, of course someone flats the big blind and leads on that texture of like 10-5-2 all hearts. It's like yeah, like very likely you're not going to lead a flush here. Like your best, you said, like could lead a 10, maybe some kind of hearts, some kind of random one hard hand that he's leading. And when but like certain boards, like like you said, the big blind's range hits a lot more on those boards. The texture is a lot better for the big blind. So I think it's for the donk lead, at least that specific situation is about getting used to which textures are the good ones to donk lead on and which ones aren't, and which ones if you see someone leading on those boards that make no sense, you can kind of at least understand that okay, this isn't like a thing people do with like the nuts on this board, for instance. Like on that 10-5-2 board, someone's not just going to lead like a king high flush draw, right? Like that. So like there's
I
like
mean, they might.
I mean they might. They might.
If
I
they're
guess if they're doing it,
if
yeah,
some
they
random
might.
opponent doing random stuff, then you just okay. So in general, what I'll say is like we can do videos where I can elaborate a little bit more on not only when you donk lead, but why it's appropriate. Because donk leading is definitely a part of the game for sure. And it's important to recognize when donk leads are appropriate because when you see your opponent do it in an inappropriate spot, you can just kind of understand a lot about that player in general. Like you probably know that they're an inexperienced player. And for two, if it's an experienced player and you see them donk leading in an inappropriate spot, they are much more going to be having hands like top pair or strong flush draws at a spot like that, where a lot of times when you donk lead strong hands and weaker hands as well. And it's not you're not donk leading because of the strength of your hand. You're donk leading because the board texture is better for that specific range than it is for the opener's range. So again, it's a topic that we can definitely dive into a little bit deeper. And but in general, it would be good even if we don't use a donk lead a lot ourselves, if we can at least understand the moments where we do use it. We can learn a lot from our opponents if we see them doing it in these spots because we can really make some pretty tight folds in situations like this because mainly they're going to be oriented towards stronger hands and stronger draws, and we just need to kind of proceed with caution in spots like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was going to actually answer Slammer's question. Was asking about Steve hates the half pot bet. I don't hate the half pot bet. I guess when you see amateur players playing a lot, they click
Mhm.
buttons a lot, and half pot is the most convenient button for them to click. And it's usually just like a
Mhm.
telltale sign if someone's just half pot betting all the time. A lot of times that they're just an amateur player. I mean, there's a lot of spots that Pio is very fine with a half pot bet post flop, but if someone's just every time they're betting half pot bet, it's a little bit of a tell. That's just kind of all I'm saying on it.
Yeah, and there's definitely times where I mean on the flop like half pot definitely gets used, but then again like when we see was gonna say in general, you don't see a lot of half pot, unless it's like half pot, and then all in on the river for half pot, and that's mainly due to stack sizes. And again, like I don't want to go too broad here. Like this could be a whole other topic we could talk about, but um, I wouldn't generally say like it's good when you see somebody like half pot three streets. Normally, once you bet the flop and you want to continue on the turn, you want to start polarizing your range a little bit more. And when that happens, you incorporate bigger bet sizes. So if you see someone just go half pot, half pot, half pot in spots where they should start polarizing their range to bigger bet sizes on turns and rivers, you can kind of generalize that opponent as a weaker opponent. And if you guys want to dig a little bit deeper into different bet sizes and when and why they're appropriate to use in different spots, we can definitely look into that. I think that's something that we can incorporate in different examples when we go through Odin a little bit more, and then hopefully I can break those down a little bit easier for you guys to comprehend if these are spots you guys are struggling with.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually just send this over to you so we have these. Maybe yeah, just keep a little note of like the video ideas maybe coming up. I'm sure you have something like that already, but I'm just gonna send you a couple
For
of
what?
these. No, I'm gonna send you a couple of these like video. Make a video about donk leads. We'll definitely do something like that. I think that's a great idea because that is such an interesting concept. And then another one at some point doesn't have to be right away. Just using different bet sizes. I think
Yeah,
both of those would be
yeah,
great kind of general things
for
because obviously
sure.
the evaluations of play is great, but I think when we can deep dive into certain subjects, it'll really help people really get that subject down.
Yeah.
For sure. All right.
And I'd love to make a video on that. But like I said, we can make a whole video on just the donk lead alone or
Oh
or
yeah.
the bet sizes and learning certain trends on multiple streets. So we can definitely dive into that in the future as well. But if we just start doing it now, then we could be here all day basically. So definitely going to be looking into that in the future if you guys want to check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's
All
keep
right,
going
let's
for
keep
now.
going. All right.
So
Interesting one here.
what do you want to do here?
I'm kind of leaning towards ripping, but I'm sure flatting's not a terrible option. This guy has pretty aggressive numbers. I mean, I guess more of a VPIP than a pre-flop raise percentage, but pretty aggressive numbers. I don't see if you have a raise first sin percentage on here. I don't think you do. But it
From
seems
the
like he's.
button?
What was that? The button?
From the button?
No, just a
Is
raise
that what you're
first.
asking?
Yeah, I'm talking about the button. No, the RFI.
Yeah, if you have a non all-in RFI size here.
Oh,
Is that
is
what
that?
you're asking?
No. I was just saying if you have on your HUD an RFI. No, I just have like raise first in
But yeah,
as like a stat. I know you have it in there somewhere. I was just curious.
yeah. So raise first in on the button. He's 4 for 8. I mean, again, this is only a 100 hand sample, so we
29%
can't look
total.
too much
Yeah,
into
yeah.
this. But I mean, 100 hands and he's running a 47-21. I would say that even
Yeah,
100
I
hands, this
think
is
it's a
still
good.
like very aggressive here. So
I think it's a good reshove spot. I think he's still gonna be opening wide enough with like maybe like an ace three off and hands like I don't know, like 10-8 suited, a 10-7 suited, queen seven
mhm.
suited, maybe queen six suited, even queen five suited, king five suited. Just a bunch of hands he's gonna be opening with. I think you're gonna be getting to fold here. He's obviously a capable player of opening too. So I think it's a pretty good
Mhm.
reshove spot from my eyes.
So what do you guys think? But we'll see what everyone gets. I mean, I guess I can wrap it up here pretty
Yeah.
quick, but I'll wait to see what everybody wants to say. Slammer wants to call.
I think a little so more in a turbo. I mean, I know you don't like to be influenced too much by that, but I think you should take a little bit more reshove spots in a turbo. Something with a 5 minute structure rather than a 15 minute structure. You're going to get less of
Uh,
those spots. So I think there is a little bit of factor in that too. Not a huge factor or anything, but a little bit.
yeah. Okay, so what do you guys want to do here? That's a move. Wants a three bet. I'm assuming at 20 bigs, you want a three bet all in.
He's saying three bet and then call. What
I do
size?
both.
What size? I think it's a reshove. Squeeze.
And doesn't play the best out of position, especially three ways the big blind calls. I like reshove more than a call. Actually, I think this hand is a hand that plays very well multi-way because it can make a lot of it can flop a lot of straight draws, a lot of flush draws here. I think like the offsuit, like let's say I don't know. Either way, these suited connectors normally play well multi-way. The point is they don't play very well multi-way for in shallow pots. Like you want to be playing these hands multi-way more so deep stacked than for like between 15 and 25 bigs. So I agree and disagree with that all at the same time. That's the move. Wants the 4x3 bet.
It's kind of blind.
Uh,
Kind of interesting.
that's what I was going to say call. I like this hand and I think it has a lot of potential. Interesting was always taught the opposite. So yeah, before I actually pull this up, Well, I'm going to show you guys the chart here, what it wants to do. I think it's 15 effective here. So we'll check 15 and 20 because obviously we are 20 ourselves, but the button is 15 effective. I guess, did everybody put in their 2 cents here before I get into it?
I feel like they have. Let's see if that's the move. Might have one more thing, but I mean, if I three bet half my stack, it's the same as rip. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so I think 20 bigs effective here. Like we just don't have like a 3 bet fold range. So I think we're either jam or call if we're gonna have a 3 betting range. It's just gonna be all in at 20 bigs. Also in general with a hand like this, I think if we have a non all in 3 bet size, I probably wouldn't choose a hand like this because it does play pretty well multi way, and yeah, I guess I would just have more like if I like let's say if we're 25 bigs effective, I would be 3 bet bluffing more like an ace five offsuit here, like something that doesn't play so well post flop, but also blocks the top of our opponent's range here with the ace five. With the 10-9, we unblock none of the strongest hands here, rather than like pocket tens and pocket nines, stuff like that. We still unblock like all the ace queens, the ace kings, stuff like that. So I don't think this is like the best hand to be turning into a bluff here. So in general, what I'll say is versus a button versus the blinds for let's say 20 to 25 and under, do very little calling in these positions for a couple reasons. The main reason is because the button is normally going to be opening anywhere between 45 to 55% of their range, which is a very wide range of hands to be opening. So that means if we end up jamming here, he's just going to have so much trash that he needs to fold, and we're just going to win so much. So you see a lot of jamming there for that reason. Also, well, I guess that's really the main reason. I mean, we essentially just have a very low call frequency versus a wider position open. And then let's say, like if the hijacked open, we'd be finding a much higher flatting frequency here because this range is going to be a whole lot stronger than a button opening range. So in general, the tighter the range, the more we want to flat, and the looser the range, the more aggressively we want to play with our 3 bets here. I'm going to bring the chart over for you guys here anyway, just check it out. So versus a button open, you can see that we are going all in with about 26% of our range, and we're only calling with 3.5% of our range. So you can see here that we are jamming the majority of our range versus a button opening range, and that's mainly, again, because the button's opening range is going to be so wide, and we want to counter that by being aggressive ourselves and just really getting our opponent to fold a lot and just taking the hand down. You see we have very little call. We want to be slow playing aces here sometimes. And then like a little bit of king 9 through king 7 suited here. And then the rest of it is pretty much just jamming here in this spot. So I think it's very interesting for you, or not interesting, but important for you guys to realize as a general rule of thumb. The wider your opponent's opening range is, the more aggressive you want to be with your 3 betting range. And the tighter the positions and the tighter your opponent's opening range, the more you want to be flatting in general. So you guys can take that as a general rule of thumb. The later the positions here, the less flatting we do. The earlier the positions we see, the more calling that we want to do. So anyway, yeah, we did end up jamming
That's a
here.
great explanation.
Yeah, I was a little bit weary about jamming here because obviously I think in general, a lot of people who are raising off of these stacks are more weighted towards the stronger parts of their range and don't have enough weaker hands at the raise folding. Like me in this spot, I have plenty of raise folds in this spot, but I also have these strong hands. I just think most opponents are more skewed towards stronger hands, but obviously with 100 hands here and our opponent running a 47-21, I think he's definitely going to have a really wide range here. So I think this hand becomes a very easy reshove. Also, what makes this a great reshove is his auto calls here are going to be a lot of like king queen suited, ace kings, ace queens, and we unblock all these hands. So when we do get called, we still have like 43% equity in the spot, which is just a little less than a coin flip. So even when we do get called, our hand has decent equity, and it's not a complete disaster if we do get called. You know what I mean? So I think this hand specifically makes a really good spot. Then obviously this sucks. This guy wakes up with a hand. So and then you see this guy. This guy does wake up with the top of his range, but even versus the top of his range, I mean, we still have 43% equity here. We're almost a coin flip in a spot like this when we only have 10 high. So, like, definitely not the worst spot for us to wake up. This is obviously super unlucky for this guy to wake up with a hand, especially when this guy is opening such a wide range here, so that sucks. But it's obviously really nice when you just run out quads and say easy game, on to the next one. So yeah, I think definitely an interesting spot for you guys to take down. Just as a general rule of thumb, the wider the opening range, the more aggressive you want to be with your three bets. The tighter the opening range, the earlier position the opening range, the more flats we can introduce.
Yeah,
I knew that had potential. Yeah, of course it did. Ten
let's
nine suited.
go.
So kind of an interesting spot here. We see a pretty small three bet in the spot for we're essentially 43 bigs effective, which is what my stack here is. So he makes it about 3x. I think he probably wants to be putting in at least like 7.5 to 8 big blinds here, this deep. I think if we were a little bit more shallow, this raise size would make a little bit more sense. That being said, I think that for the price that we're being given, I don't think that we can fold between the price and us being in position here. So I'm going to flick it in here. Then we flop beautifully, of course.
Flick it in.
What do you guys want to do here? Versus a small bet.
I mean, interesting spot. I mean, I think this plays. I feel like you could play both ways between a call and a raise here. I guess kind of like I don't mind a raise against a small bet. Against a big bet, it would just be an easy call. Against a small bet, I feel like you can kind of go both ways. I'm not sure if this hand needs protection on this board or anything, so probably all right as a call at these stack depths. But also, I don't mind maybe a raise and getting it all in on the turn. I mean, you're going to get in against like ace, king, aces. I mean, I guess not like too many. I mean, you could have like a king jack suited. Maybe he's three betting you with here. I don't know. It's an interesting spot. I don't know if the hand really needs any protection though, or too much protection. I mean, yeah, you could have like ace jack in his range. Maybe like some ace 10 hands like that. Yeah, go ahead.
So Kenny says flat. Smooth says call. Call by slammer. Found a flood call.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning.
Keep the bottom of the range in. Plus, we block a decent amount of his betting range here.
I think I'm
Yes,
leaning
I
call
agree
at the
with that.
stack depths. I think I'm leaning call at the stack depths. even at
Slammer
a
said,
small
I'd be
bet.
afraid he has nothing. Yeah, so I think those are like our natural instincts too. Whenever we flop big, we're afraid that if we raise, our opponent's just going to have nothing. But then, like on the flip side, when we have like a draw and we want to raise here, we're just kind of nervous because we think our opponent has the nuts. I think that's just kind of like general poker psychology, really, is like you always assume your opponent has the nuts when you have a bluff, and you always assume that they might have the weaker part of their range when we have the nuts. So I'll start with this. This board is going to be probably better for the three betters range than it's going to be for our range. I think with kings and queens, we're going to be pretty high frequency four bet jam versus a three bet. So those hands are out of our range. Also, our opponent should be three betting like ace king, ace queen, maybe some king queen offsuit here. So pocket queens, pocket kings, of course. So this board's going to be better, I think, in general, for the three betters range here. So he gets to counter that by using a pretty high frequency C bet strategy. So if he's three betting, continuation betting the majority of his range, like yes, he's going to have the top of it, but he's also going to have the bottom of it if he's just bluffing everything. And then I think what you guys were saying about this hand needing like very little protection, I think that gives like little reason to raise. Also, the pot's becoming pretty bloated, and I don't think we need to raise now in order to get all the chips in by the river. So I want to keep his range wide. There's really only an ace or a jack or 10 are like bad, quote unquote bad cards for us. I think right now we essentially have the nuts. So also, since this board is so good for him, if he is bluffing, I assume he'll be pretty aggressive on a board like this because we're still going to have hands like, let's say, ace 5 suited, queen jack of clubs, jack 10 suited, jack 9 suited that we're going to have to defend versus a small bet size. So yeah, we have a super strong hand here, but we're also going to have like a lot of marginal hands in the spot here too that are going to want to play mostly call on a board that's so good for our opponent. And that's another thing you'll see. I think when the board is so much better for our opponent, we're going to have very little raise in our range as well. So the worse the board is for us, the less we're going to be raising here. So I think in general, we're just going to be high frequency call anyway. But then again, with the stack to pot ratio and this hand needing very little protection, I think it's just kind of a fist bump call in the spot. So if we are raising here, what bluffs do we have? Ace ten clubs or something. If we have no bluffs, then it's face up. We have king queen of pocket fives. And yeah, I think when there are raises here, I think people are probably way more. I mean, in general, just general rule of thumb in poker, when you see people raising, they are going to have more value than anything. But specifically in like a 3-bet pot, I think that holds true even more. So bluffs, I think here would be like decent bluffs if we're gonna have some, and I think a like small amount of raise does get in here for sure. I just think it's gonna be like a lot of call and very little raise. So I think good candidates to do that with would be like a jack nine suited, a 10-9 suited, maybe even a hand like ace five of hearts, something like that, that could potentially get a hand like pocket tens or pocket nines to fold. I think those would be decent semi bluffs, but yeah, in general, I think people are going to stretch to find those two. So we also don't want to kind of turn our hand face up, because I know it's kind of seems natural just to quote unquote protect our hand here because we have a really good hand, but we want to think about what our overall range is here, and how good this board is for our opponent's range. And since it's so much better for our opponent than it is for us, we just want to be using a pretty high frequency call strategy here. So, and then on the turn we see this. What do you guys want to do?
I mean, I think it's just still a call. I don't think anything's changed right now. I think he still could have some bluffs in his range, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think you have to protect too much, especially when you have the king of diamonds. I think maybe if you didn't have the king of diamonds, this could turn into a shove now. But I think since you're protecting against the king high flush draws, I think I like calling more. It seems like calling is the best play. I think there's still a chance he has some bluffs in his range. Maybe some like, I mean, yeah, there's a chance he could have like an ace queen of diamonds. I guess there are some big flush draws he could have. I don't know if he played this way with those hands necessarily. But you're still keeping some bluffs in his range. And yeah, I think your hand might just be too strong to start shoving here, especially with the king X of diamonds. I think maybe without the king X of diamonds, you could start protecting here. I mean, yeah, there's going to be like some ace kings and aces, but like it's really hard other than that to figure out like what, I guess other hands, or maybe like ace queen of diamonds, maybe like an ace jack of diamonds, ace 10 of diamonds, but he might not play the latter two this way. It's hard to think of like other hands you're going to be getting it in here that he's going to call to a shove too, you know? So I think
Yep.
for that reason, I would probably be calling.
Okay,
Those
so
reasons.
let's see what everybody says. Yeah, and you made some good points there too. I think Slammer says mainly I'd be calling. I just want to call, see how much he'll bluff off next. I wouldn't want to take him away from him. Or maybe that was from the first street. So Slammer says raise, I think, on the turn. That's the move. Says time bank call. I like that you added the time bank. Yeah, you definitely. I would be throwing in the just before the
I
time
like
bank
that.
activated. I think I would probably call. Slammer says raise to 690, and Found and Flood says call again. So I think the point you made about the diamond is pretty good, because we need to worry about flush draws a little bit more since we have the king of diamonds in our hand. It's less likely that our opponent has some sort of pair and flush draw as well. Also, if our opponent has a hand like, let's say, ace jack with a diamond or ace 10 with a diamond, and the river comes a diamond, they're likely to bluff those hands. So with the king of diamonds in our hand specifically as well, I think we just end up calling. And then if we're gonna find raises here, because I definitely think some raises should be used in the spot once the four diamonds comes, because obviously like some flush draws get there, and we do have some hands that want to protect against it a little bit more. Like, let's say if we have a hand like king 10 of spades here, I think that would be a little bit more rational for us to be jamming, because there's a lot worse rivers for a hand like king 10 of spades than there is for king queen with a diamond that blocks potential flush draws. So I definitely think some raises get in here. I just would probably not do it with this specific hand in general. Also, I think there's essentially no river that we end up getting here that we ever end up folding this hand to. So essentially, if we're in a spot where there's no river that we're going to end up folding, we probably just want to mainly call, especially when the SPR, stack to pot ratio, is this shallow. I think we want to be calling a lot with those hands, and then jamming a little bit more with hands that are A, good enough to get in for value, and B, require a little bit more protection in a spot like this. So yeah, in general, I'm going to be calling here a lot with this specific hand, and then be jamming a little bit more with, let's say, like I said, maybe the king jack, no diamond, the king 10, no diamond, stuff like that. And then if we want to have some bluffs here, like if I had a hand like ace 3 of diamonds, ace 2 of diamonds, I could kind of merge bluff a hand like that, potentially get them to fold out like an ace jack or an ace 10, just anything that we would obviously be happy if we ended up jamming like ace three of diamonds, ace deuce of diamonds, even a hand like jack 10 of diamonds, jack 9 of diamonds could kind of jam there, and then even if we get called, our hand definitely more than likely has decent equity in spots like that. So I think hands like that make a little bit more sense. And then he ends up jamming the river. Obviously, we're going to snap it off here. And he has a jack 10 of
Nice.
hearts. So I'm not sure if this hand gets in his three betting range at 43 bigs. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of three bet here. In general, I think I would be calling a lot with a jack 10 suited, but I wouldn't be surprised if it got some three bet at this stack depth. So I don't hate this by any means. Probably a decent bluff candidate for him to bluff off too. I would probably give up a little bit more with like the ace jack and the ace 10 with a diamond, and then bluff a little bit more with like the jack 10 suited, the jack 9 suited, the 10-9 suited, stuff like that. Essentially, like the weaker your showdown is, the more you want to be bluffing. So I think we give up a little bit more with the ace jacks and the ace 10s, and then he wants to be bluffing more with the jack 10s, jack 9s, 10-9s, stuff like that. So I think pretty well played by him overall, even though he ended up running into a pretty strong hand. I think that by calling, we definitely allowed him to bluff it off, where he would have just ended up folding. At least, I mean, he probably has to call a raise on the flop, but on the turn, if he bets and we jam, he definitely has to fold. Where we end up calling and allow him to bluff it off. Obviously, if a 9 or an ace comes, we're still going to call it off and we're going to lose. But that's only 8 cards that he can hit, so he's essentially like 18% going to the river. So it does suck when he gets there sometimes, but we can't be results oriented in spots like that. Like, just because he might be able to catch up to us doesn't necessarily mean we should always be ripping, because he might suck out on us. Like, that's not how it works. Like, sometimes you're going to make the right play, and then sometimes your opponent is just going to get there. That's just kind of, the nature of the beast. So I wouldn't worry about the results, and just make sure that we take the strongest approach that we can here. And I think this is probably the best play for this hand.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
All
Got
right,
him to
cool.
bluff off with the jack 10.
That was pretty sweet. I think that probably put us around the chip lead, I think. So,
Let's do like either one more or like maybe like one more short one and like one more good one, something
uh
like that. We're
and then
getting to
I
that.
guess for our next session, we can pick this up
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
So,
let's do that. Let's mark where you left off.
the pocket eights here, obviously a pretty easy open.
Yeah.
This guy calls small blind with 33 bigs. Pretty dry board here. I think I'm just going to be betting pretty high frequency for a small
Yeah.
size here. And then on the queen, it gets kind of interesting here. I mean, he should be floating some, let's say, some queen, jack of hearts, queen, jack of spades, king, queen of spades, stuff like that. Like, if he ever has ace, queen here, which he probably doesn't have, I think he probably ends up jamming or three betting at 30 bigs from these positions. But he's definitely going to have some queen X here. In general, the Broadway cards are going to be better for the pre-flop overness range as opposed to the caller's range. But he is calling from the small blind, which is going to strengthen his overall range a lot more than, like, let's say, a big blind calling range here. So we probably have to be a little bit tighter here. That being said, I wouldn't hate a bet here on the turn. Unblocking clubs that he could have potentially turned is pretty good because we would get value from worse hands like that. He's also going to potentially have some, like, let's say, king 9 of spades, some king jack of spades, stuff like that picks up equity here. Even some like ace deuce that we can put some pressure on and potentially get called twice here. So I think I ended up rolling here. I don't remember what I did. Yeah, I checked. So I wouldn't hate a bet here. I wouldn't hate a check. I think this hand probably gets to do both. I think if I had the 8 of clubs myself, I would probably end up checking a little bit more because that takes out the potential of him check calling with a potential club draw that he ended up turning. So definitely okay with the check here on the turn. And then he checks on the river. What do you guys want to do?
Sorry, I was just laughing at what that's the move wrote. He checks on the river. Yeah, I think it's going to play as a value bet here. Probably wouldn't go big or anything. I don't think you're going to necessarily. I mean, I guess you could go like a 2/3 sizing, but I think you're trying to get called by like a pocket fours, pocket fives. Maybe like an ace two suited, an ace three suited. I guess some hands like that. I think there's still a little bit of value to be had. I mean, his range, I guess, could still be a little bit uncapped. I mean, it's not out of the question he could have a 10, but I
Agree.
think there's going to be some times on the flop he'll check raise a 10. There's going to be a lot of times he'll call a 10, and he definitely could play it this exact way. But there's probably still some value to be had. I guess there's not like a ton of hands though, which I don't love, like fours, fives, sixes, sevens, maybe like ace two suited. ace three suited, I guess, kind of hard to find too many hands you're getting value from, but I still think there's like a little bit value to be had. Maybe you could have like an ace jack could hero you or something, or like I guess like an
Okay, what do you
ace
guys want to do?
nine suited. I don't
Found
know.
a Flood says, sorry, bud. I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off
no,
there,
you're
but
good.
yeah, Found a
Let's
Flood
hear it.
wants to go third pot. Summer wants to go 210, which is probably like 60% pot. I really don't know what I'm trying to get called by though. Lower pocket pairs, I guess. So it's actually a good point that you made there, Slammer. Whenever we're betting, the first thing we want to think about before we recognize if our hand is good enough to bet is, are we going to get called by worse hands? And if the answer is yes, more than likely our hand is going to be a value bet. And if the answer is no, we more than likely just end up shutting down, really. So that's essentially like something that you want to be asking yourself a lot when you get to the river, like because a lot of times people will bet in a spot where they think they have value, but then you go back and say, is a worse hand calling? And if the answer is no, then more than likely your hand is probably not a value bet. That's the move, says check back to avoid the puke when he check shoves over my small bet. Yeah, definitely something you probably have to be worried about. Is that we get everything from everyone? Kenny G, what do you want to do here, bud?
That's the move set. I tried my best not to be results oriented, but I still haven't found a restaurant that'll let me pay in EV.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the best poker joke of the day.
Yeah,
I'll go with that. Only a poker player will
actually, that's the
understand
move. I
that.
might post that on our Twitter, actually, if that's cool. I might throw that on there. I like that quote.
Kenny G says I'm likely a check back most of the time. Okay, so I'll adjust a few things. I think the main thing that we're looking at here is, are we going to get called by worse hands? And then I think another good question here that was addressed was, or not a question necessarily, but wanting to avoid getting check raised on, which is definitely something that we have to worry about for sure. So I guess I'll start with that. Like we're always going to have like thin value bets that can potentially check raised, and those spots suck and we have to fold them a lot of the times, and yes, they do suck, but on the flip side, I don't think that that should discourage us from making thin value bets in these spots for sure. In general, I think I've said this in the past before, and I think we were talking about that when we were talking about European, basically. I think when he ended up checking trip aces on the river, and then I think his opponent had like a king high flush draw that he ended up giving up with. And the main point that I made there is that a player as strong as European is capable of having strong hands in his check range when he gets to the river. So, but overall, I think weaker players are gonna, and I don't know this player in general. I mean, I only had 53 hands, but I think if it's just some average opponent that I'm running into, I'm going to assume that more often than not, they're just going to be betting their value hands on the river and checking with their weaker hands. And that's essentially why we're able to value bet a lot thinner against opponents who are playing a more face up strategy than like tough opponents who are not only going to find river check raises with strong hands, but also like let's say if Jamar has a hand like ace deuce of hearts here and he wants to turn that hand into a bluff, and then he gets us to fold a better hand like pocket eights, like yeah, so I'd probably be a little less likely to value bet against a player who's capable of check raise bluffing and also trapping stronger hands a little more often than a random opponent. But then I think where we get a lot of value against average to weaker opponents is finding these really thin value bets here. And again, we're not going to have to worry about getting check jammed or check raise bluffed that much. We can also assume like when they do check raise, they're more often than not just going to have it, and then we can kind of easily fold anyway, rather than be like, oh, do I have to hero call here on the river? This guy could be bluffing. More often than not, an average opponent is not going to be bluffing in a spot like this. So we can, it sucks to have to bet fold it, but again, I don't think that should discourage us from betting here on the river. So I did end up going with a two. Oh, so I guess the other thing I was going to ask is, I think Steve, you said you would go for a third pot here, and Found and Flood also says they want to go for a third pot here. I guess I'll ask you this: oh, what are you doing here if you have 9-8 of hearts?
If I have 9 8 of hearts in your shoes or the other guy, your shoes, right?
Your shoes and our shoes.
Yeah, you would
Yep.
probably go a little bit bigger. Yeah, probably go like two
Right.
thirds. Yeah, something like that.
So
So so
are there hands that you're bluffing here for third pot?
yeah, I guess probably not too many. Probably not very many. No, it doesn't feel like you feel like if you're bluffing for a third pot, you're just dying to get called. So probably not too many. Yeah.
Right, and this is also something that I notice as well when I see these spots like this where people end up third potting. It's just almost never a bluff. It's always some sort of thin value. So whenever I have like a bluff catcher, like even if Odin will say, oh, you should be calling here because your opponent could be bluffing here. Most people are not bluffing in these spots when they make it like a third pot on the river. And they're just trying to get some thin value. So because they see like, oh, pocket eights, like we don't know like many hands that are going to be worse. I just want to bet really small and get a crying call. When in actuality, I would be a little more willing to hero call here if I had a hand like if I was in the small blind shoes and I have ace deuce of hearts. If I see a random opponent bet 2/3 here on the river, I'd be more willing to call than if he bet 1/3 on the river because I think there's more bluffs in that 2/3 pot size bet on the river than I would ever think there would be in a third pot bet size here. So we actually not only do we make more money by betting a bigger size, it also looks like we have more bluffs when we go bigger here, as opposed to just going really small and just hoping for the crying
And
call.
on kind of
So
like an interesting note on like I guess what that's the move wrote, I feel like people in general, especially like a random in general, will be a lot less apt to check raise you on that river if you go bigger rather than going small. Like even though you like you're saying like you could still have bluff, so a good player could sense that out. But I think like a random player, when you go like 2/3 compared to 1/3 or 3/4 compared to 1/3, there's a much less of a chance he's just gonna come in there with like I don't know like an ace jack and be like, all right, I'm shoving right now, you know. Like,
right,
I think that's a
right.
lot lower of a chance. And obviously, you still could have all these overpairs in your range. You still could have a decent amount of overpairs. You could have some queen X's. You know, there's still some hands you could definitely have in your range.
I get
Two
pocket
for,
queens, I get that
yeah,
queen 10 suited, I get that pocket threes. Like all these
yeah,
hands
yeah,
can check back here on the turn
for
for
sure.
sure. So it's not like I never have the nuts when I just check back on the turn. I mean, I am I don't want to say mainly capped, but I am somewhat capped, I would say, once I check back, because yes, I'm not going to be full weight checking back like queen 10, let's say pocket twos, pocket queens. Like those are going to bet sometimes, but they're also going to check and trap here sometimes too. So we now if we were like 100 bigs deep, I'd probably be betting a lot higher frequency because we're a little bit more incentivized to build a bigger pot because stacks are deeper. At more shallow stacks, we want to be slow playing these hands where we essentially have a lock on the hand and don't need very much protection and want to either have our opponent bluff or end up calling us down with a hand he may have just folded if we had double barreled. So yeah, anyway, we did end up going for the 2/3 size here and got the call by the five deuce suited.
Wow, there we go.
So
You forget this
so
random factor of how people play in like $50 random tournaments, series
yeah,
tournaments on Poker Stars.
yeah.
It's like that factor, like you forget when we're evaluating hands, this random factor is like just so hard to think about sometimes because like you do see like so much weird, crazy shit like all over the place, you know? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I
So
must sent you a hand yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, where it was like I guy limped under the gun one, and then I reshoved like 13 bigs and he called like 9-6 off, and I'm like,
yeah.
what?
Oh yeah, you told me that.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all right,
Yeah. So I guess I'll wrap it up by saying like if I bet third pot, do I think my opponent's folding? No, I don't think he's ever folding. But I will say that we do obviously get more value when we bet the bigger size. And so when we both get more value and then also like look a little bit more bluffy when we have like a value hand. Like those are both like it's good to maximize our value by betting bigger, and it's also nice to look like we have bluffs in our range when we are actually betting for value. So, like I said, I think if we bet a third pot, if I'm in this guy, I mean, I'll never have deuce five here, but like I said, if I have a hand like ace deuce suited here and I see a third pot value bet here on the river, I'm probably gonna hero fold here. But if I'm in the small blind shoes with ace deuce suited and I see this 2/3 pot bet, I think there's going to be a lot more bluffs in this range, and that's going to want to make me hero call a little bit more here. So these are something that things like Odin and Pile Solver aren't going to be able to tell you. This is just what you're going to see by playing a lot in general and kind of getting a read on how most like average to recreational opponents are playing. So these are like nice little things that hopefully little tips that we can give you guys to kind of notice as well. And again, I think this is like a really good spot for you guys to recognize as well because I think some people were saying value bet, some people were saying bet small, but the main thing we want to ask ourselves is do we ever get called by worse here? And if the answer is yes, then more than likely we're going to want to throw in a value bet. And again, if we are playing against weaker opponents, for one, weaker opponents don't like to fold very much, so we can value bet a lot more thinly against them and make a lot more money versus these weaker players than we would be able to against stronger players. And what was the other point I was going to make there? And the second point is that weaker players are more than likely going to play their hand face up. So if our opponent does somehow have a queen or a 10 here, I think they're mainly just going to be betting on the river because they're afraid like we're just going to check back here and they're not going to get value, as opposed to realize like that they can actually trap in this spot with some stronger hands too. So the fact that weaker players are playing a little bit more face up means that we can value bet them a lot more thinly. So in general, like I said, when we see our opponents check, we can be betting a lot more because they're going to be a lot weaker. And when we see them bet, we're going to be folding a lot more because in general, they're going to be a lot stronger. So just little notes for you guys to be on the lookout for when you're playing, and this is like a $55 tournament. I'm not saying this is high stakes, but this is still, 20K to first place, you know what I mean? So, like, there's still a lot of money to be made. And if people are doing this in $55 tournaments, I'm sure they're doing it in $5 tournaments,
Oh, yeah.
$3 tournaments, $2 tournaments. So, of course, like, we want to be getting thin value against these opponents for sure. And just anytime you guys are in a spot like this, like I said, if you can't figure out whether or not your hand is a value bet, just ask yourself, are you getting called by worse? And then you can basically proceed from there.
Yeah, and people like sometimes, especially people like these tournaments who aren't like maybe studying ranges or they're more casual players. Like the emotions of the game, number one, can affect them and make them do silly things. So they lose a pot, they're like, all right, I got to get these chips back. Like that's a very common thing that like I had this like that Elliot Rowe, mind coach for a little while. He would talk about this is one of the most common things in poker that people don't even recognize about their own psychology. When they lose chips, they want to like play a pot to get the chips back. So like there's just a lot of
Not a
random.
good mindset to
What
have.
was that?
This is not a good mindset to have.
Yeah, yeah. So there's just a lot of like
Or
random players just doing random things, and like just you got to kind of just understand when someone doesn't have that kind of I guess like fundamental knowledge in their game. That's kind of what happens when you don't know about ranges. You start seeing like, oh, you saw someone make a big bluff. You saw Phil Ivey once make a big bluff on TV. You saw him play 2-5 suited aggressively, but you didn't realize it was like heads. It was like a heads up game, and he was on the button and like whatever. And now you decide to do it in like that hand. It's like so many like influences just happen where people see something on TV. They don't really know why it happened. They see you're a really good German player just play a hand super aggressively and win it, and like, all right, I'm gonna try to do that. And like there's just a lot of like
right.
that out there with like people don't actually understand what you're doing. That's why we're trying to teach you guys like you get the fundamentals down especially, and from there you can really expand your game. But you got to get the fundamentals down, get your ranges down, know
Yeah.
what you're doing from each position. It's so important to learn because without that there's a lot more of a random like what am I doing in this spot, oh what am I doing here, but if you get those ranges down, it's not such a like guessing game as much. Poker's of course a tough game and a lot of different situations, but it's not as much of a guessing game if you have the fundamentals down in your head.
Yeah. And just to add on to that little point you were making about the fundamentals, now I think I've really maximized my EV in these, games where there's a lot of weaker players in there by kind of playing a more face-up strategy and not trying to do all this fancy shit like oh, it gets to the river and my opponent triple barrels, but I have a good check raise bluff, situation because of whatever my hand is in the situation, but not realizing that yes, in theory, this hand might be a good check raise bluff candidate, but what the solver's not taken into account is that random humans are not triple barrel bluffing as wide as a solver is, so this bluff is not going to work as much versus if Odin's playing against itself as if Odin was playing against some random weekend warrior who's out there, you know what I mean, because they're
Yeah.
just going to be more skewed towards value. So I would say in general, keep things as simple as possible, guys. um, um, we really don't have to get into fancy play here. It's good to know the fundamentals, but it's also good to just play like a real face-up strategy because a lot of these opponents aren't going to recognize that you're being so face-up. And when you kind of get away from that fancy play, which has plagued me for a very long time, and since I've kind of driven away from that in these weaker kind of fields, I think I'm having a lot more EV being shown in the last couple of months. So yeah, just keep things as simple as possible versus these people, and you guys should see some pretty good results. Kenny says, "I hate folding." Oh, what a fish! Yeah, I mean, don't feel bad about that. I hate folding too, but there's obviously like certain situations where it's obviously fine to do it.
How bad is the
That's a move that is
yeah? How bad is the
how bad
river
is the
call?
river call with the deuce? Um, So again, like I'm gonna be bluffing hands like maybe like some king nine, some jack nine, some 10-9, or no 10-9, jack nine, 9-8, maybe like some king eight suited here. So I'm gonna have a lot of hands that need a bluff here, and I guess with his specific combo, he doesn't really block that much of it. I'm probably just gonna be giving up with a hand like ace five of diamonds. So I guess he blocks a hand like that. So I'm mainly gonna be bluffing with some king nine, some jack nines, some 9-8s, 9-7s, stuff like that that have no showdown value. So the fact that he unblocks these, I think, is fine. Now, if he knows like I'm capable of having enough bluffs here, then I guess it's also fine too. But in general, I think the bet check bet line is pretty underbluffed in general. So I'd still say this call is probably fine overall. It's probably kind of hard to fold the pair here, especially like I said, I'd like to think that I'm bluffing enough hands in the spot. Like I said I'd be bluffing the 9-8s, the jack nines, the stuff like that. So I think he probably does need a hero with his hand if he's going to play it. So I don't think it's terrible by any means. The
Okay.
call pre-flop's terrible, but
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think the way that he played it is that bad overall. So yeah, do you want to wrap it up here and maybe take a few
Yeah.
questions from everybody?
Yeah, yeah, let's wrap. I think we wrap it up here. We're at the magical hour and a half mark. It seems like what people like their maximum to be for these. So
Yeah.
I think that's where we should start wrapping up. So yeah, if anyone has any
So
questions, any other thoughts, throw in. Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
yeah, just about anything. It doesn't have to be from this hand review. It can be, just general theory or things that you guys are noticing that you have some questions on. I mean, absolutely anything. Fire.
And we'll what was the real quick this video that I sent you a message about? Yeah, we'll Kurt will make something about donk leads. That'll definitely be a cool. Kurt can make a video about donk leads. I think that'd be a nice video coming up here. Kurt, what do you think? Like how we were talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
I think there's probably like more relevant topics that we should jump into. I mean, I can probably wrap up the donk leading topic pretty I mean, the dynamics of donk leading can get kind of complicated, but I can at least show pretty quickly like why and how the donk lead is used properly and how you see like random opponents using it improperly, basically. So we could do that. And like I said, I think you guys could get by and definitely win without even incorporating donk leads into your game. Like I'm just really kind of starting to do it myself now. So although I know it's been appropriate, like you can kind of get away with not just using like a pure check strategy out of position. So, but yeah, we can obviously talk about that in future videos for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. Like donk leads are definitely not like the number one thing you need to be
I think
learning
the
or
more
anything.
a more relevant topic for us to jump into is like if you guys want to talk about
I,
bet sizes on certain flops and sizes we use on turns and rivers, over
Kurt,
betting. I heard
Kurt,
we
hold on.
wanted to talk about here.
I just had a really good thought because this related to what Slammer said. How about you do something that's like defending against donk leads because you do see donk leads a lot at lower stakes. You definitely see them a
Uh-huh.
lot. So maybe you could make something about how to like play back at them necessarily, not like how you're donk leading because that is a very complicated subject. I feel like that's a lot more complicated than at least like you could pull up that spot like the 10-5-2 all hearts one, right? Like that's a good moment. Like some things like that because there is a lot of donk leads at lower stakes and sometimes they are a little awkward to play against.
So I'll give you, I mean, just the overall opinion on donk leads at lower stakes and people who are probably not using them at the right times. Uh, in general, those hands are not going to be like you're not going to see donk leads by like complete air balls very often. I mean, it does happen, but it's more of the exception than the norm. So in general, when you see somebody donk leading, they're just going to have either top pair or some sort of good draw. So in general, like I used to raise a lot versus donk leads that don't make any sense. But when the opponent's range is mostly like good draws and top pair, you just get folds very infrequently in that spot. So you can just kind of play your hand pretty face up. If you have some sort of draw or backdoor draw, you can call. If you have a pair, you probably have to see at least one and see a turn anyway. So I would say play pretty face up once you see the donk lead because people donk leading in those spots are probably playing pretty face up too. So don't get too fancy in those spots. I've definitely spewed a lot of chips in the past, like trying to make people fold when they're dunk leading in spots that they shouldn't be. But then they just wind up with a hand. You know, they shouldn't have the hand, but they still end up calling down even versus your all in raise or whatever. So
All right, cool.
It's what I'm gonna say.
Let's
Steve, on your
see.
streams, when you say that this is not a thing or the size of the bet is not a thing, will you give me a line or two to explain? I don't want to turn your streams into total education and take away your vibe, but sometimes some of the things are so obvious to you and everybody else watching are not for me. Yeah, I think we addressed that earlier too. I think with the way that I think it would make more sense, obviously, in a review like this because this is, we're trying to learn here, and Steve is both, helping you guys learn, but also trying to be entertaining at the same time. So I guess that's up to Steve, whatever he thinks
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
I'll do my best for sure. I'll definitely do my best. I can't guarantee, obviously, it'll be full explanation at every moment. Sometimes I have so many tables. I'm trying to talk to the chat, but no, I definitely will do my best. And I feel like some days I'm like explaining it better than other days. So I know what you're saying, so I'll definitely do my best to do that.
I also think it's probably better that we save the majority of like strategy, I guess, for these types of reviews for the people who are in the Discord rather than just random people coming in on Twitch. Like we want to reward you guys for supporting us by giving you guys like every little bit of information we have, and I think that's good for us to hold that exclusively for you guys in the Discord who have been supporting us for so long. So I do definitely think it's okay to throw in some bits and pieces here, but I think Steve's stream is actually a lot more entertaining than mine because my instinct when I'm talking poker is just to talk strategy, and I'm not realizing that like people are on Twitch to be entertained too. Not they don't just want to be coached up here always. So and that's like once I start streaming again, I think I need to start leaning more towards just being kind of more chill rather than trying to teach, more so. And then we save the teachings for these review sessions like we're doing here pretty much. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't, dive into some explanations while we're streaming either. It's just not going to be the main focus.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point by Kenny. There's, like this clip button on Twitch, and it's actually pretty simple. I think you just literally, I know Slammer probably watches the streams on YouTube, so I'm not sure if that's on YouTube, but even if you just mark the time of the video it is and you want more of an explanation, or if you just clip it, you could do a little clip on Twitch, and we'll go back to it. And
Okay.
I'd love to review it in a future session for sure, because sometimes, yeah, I'm just in the middle of the hand, and I don't go into too much detail about it, or sometimes I'll go into like very thin detail, like this isn't a thing. I'm playing back at this guy, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So
Sometimes it's just hard to keep up with all the action going on. So it's
yeah,
hard to do that and explain everything that's going on in the moment too. So
right.
yeah, completely understandable. A slammer, yeah, I just want a line or two. If I catch it, I catch it. If I don't, I don't. Don't want to give you too much info out there. Everybody get that. I don't know what this clipping is that you speak of. Yeah, I think I've actually seen that before, just on like on Tonka's stream. I think I remember seeing little clips. I'm like, where's that coming from? I don't even understand how they do that, but
Yeah, yeah. It's
I guess
literally
it
just
is a
in by
thing.
by the volume. Like if you turn on my Twitch stream, it'll be like by the volume tab. Like there'll just be like a little like director looking thing, and it's just like a little clip thing, and you just do it, and it like clips the last minute of your video or something, I think.
Oh,
So if
yeah, that's
something
cool.
exciting
Oh,
happens right before, then it just clips that minute. So if something exciting happens, you're like, oh, that was cool, and then you just like clip it, and then it stays on your
right.
Twitch.
Yeah, that's a nice little feature.
Oh yeah, she's watching on Roku. So, but anyway, yeah, if you Slammer, you could always, if you want, you could always write down the time of it. I mean, I know it's a little more complicated, or just mark down the time of it. But I'll gladly, I'll try to do my best to explain for sure too. But obviously on Twitch, it's a little more entertainment than poker explanation. So it's kind of a mix of both. But it's
Right.
y-
For sure.
yeah. So it's a little bit of both. We don't want to, like I said, like Kurt said too, we don't want to give like too much away. I feel like usually I talk pretty freely on Twitch, so I'm probably just kind of saying whatever's strategy on my mind, but like we don't want to still give like way too much away. But I'll definitely go into some great explanations for sure, and get some good ones on certain pots, especially when I'm like have less tables. I think when I get to sometimes at 1 a.m. at night, I'm just like my explanations just disappear at that point. Like 1 a.m. I'm just like I'm raising, I'm calling, like.
Yeah, thankfully I haven't grinded those hours for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Last night, last night this guy was pot betting pre-flop all the time, like deep in the tournament, and I
Nice.
was just cracking up. He's like, you should explain why you're. Yeah, that's fair. So like, yeah, if someone's like, that's just like instantly giving away that you're the a huge fish. Like if you're like 20 left in a tournament, like that's like when I say the half pot button. This is even more like hilarious than the half pot button. At least the half pot button is a very normal bet in most spots. Pot betting pre-flop is like 4.3x, I believe. So that means you're 4.3xing all the time pre-flop late in tournaments. That's just your normal open sizing. So, if someone's doing that on 20 big blinds, you could just instantly mark them as like a fish. So, yeah, I was cracking up. This guy was just doing it. It was that same guy who was limping all the time and like playing 70% VPIP. He was pot betting pre-flop. So,
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Any other questions from you guys?
for sure. All right, guys. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. If you guys got any more questions, fire them up quickly and we'll get out of here. We had a nice long session. Yeah, dude, you should. That's the move. Pot your first hand next table. Yeah, or deep run. It'll probably work too. I bet no one will call pre-flop. I mean, I shouldn't
Definitely.
say that. I can't say that, but I bet there's a
They'll be
good
calling
chance.
tighter,
Yeah,
at
he'll be
least.
calling
Yeah.
tighter for sure. You'll take out
Yeah.
5% more of the range or something, maybe.
All right.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right. Yeah, guys. Glad you're digging these streams. Like I said, we're gonna try to keep these up here the next couple weeks. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll probably just pick up with the rest of this. Like I said, we did pick up halfway into this, and I don't know how many hands we got, but we might end up taking another 2 days to finish this, or we might just be able to finish it
Yeah. So
the next
pocket
session that
eights,
we do.
leaving on the eights hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So yeah,
real
thanks, Slammer. Appreciate it.
and yeah, congrats, Kurt. Yeah, great score yesterday, man. That's awesome. You've been killing it. You've been killing them.
Yeah, happy about that one.
I was gonna
Good way to
say,
start off.
just want to tell everybody else, we got an hour and a half from now, a Twitter space. It's just gonna be Ruthless and Linus. They're gonna be talking Lionshare. They're gonna be talking NFTs. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So coming on that, we're doing the Lionshare Poker Show. This is gonna be episode 1. So you don't want to miss the
Nice.
Lionshare Poker Show. So you want to get in there, and yeah, they'll be in there an hour and a half doing that. So I don't think I posted the link yet, but just check out for Ruthless's Twitter space. I'll probably post it on events here shortly. They should have the link
Okay.
here any second now. So yeah, definitely tune in for that, guys.
Will the stream be posted in here later? Do you mean the session that we're doing now, or Steve's stream that's going to be coming up later?
Oh, no, the Twitter space. We'll just post a link
The
for it.
Twitter
That's what I'm saying.
Spaces.
Yeah, yeah, just a
Okay.
Twitter space. Yeah, yeah. No, I don't know if I'll
Cool.
be streaming tonight, but this Twitter space, hour and a half from now, tune in for that. That'll be a lot of fun, and they'll probably be talking some
Right.
great NFT strategy too. I'm sure.
Yeah, nice. All right.
So that's
Thanks, man.
this afternoon.
Yeah, hour and a half from now. It's at 12:30 Eastern time, or sorry, 12:30 Pacific, dude. My bad. 12:30.
I'll try to
Pacific.
make that.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
definitely.
Thanks.
All right, Kenny.
Nice,
Appreciate
nice.
you guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Appreciate all y'all. Thank you,
Yeah,
Kurt.
thanks, guys. Thanks again. Really digging these. Appreciate it, Steve, and I'll see you guys soon.
All right, later, guys. Bye.
Have a
Bye.
good one.
Bye.
All right, see ya.